And with that, I'm going to bring up Mike Praeger. Mike is the CEO and founder of AvidXChange, a good friend, a great supporter of the community. Please welcome to the stage Mike Praeger. Thank you. All right. Yeah, right there. All right, you got a little.
I'd say I'm pretty excited to be back in person. As I've been traveling a lot lately, and just the energy that there is in people getting back, and it's really refreshing. And I really am trying to encourage our team to get out, see customers, get back, because it is infectious energy.
Yeah, it's great to do that, and thank you for being here with us. For those of you who don't know, AvidXChange has been our partner and host for a number of years now. And when we first did FinTech Generation, we actually hosted it one year in the very beginning in the lobby of AvidXChange. We black draped the entire lobby, kicked all your teammates out for a couple of days, and it was great to be able to do that. And then even during the pandemic, we broadcast FinTech Generations live from AvidXChange, even though we didn't have an audience. We had all our speakers there, and you came down and kicked us off. So thank you for doing that again.
Yeah, no, excited. I mean, this is a core element to the ecosystem and the fabric of Charlotte. And not only for the entrepreneurism, but also leaning into kind of what we become in terms of having a theme around FinTech.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and I've told you the story before. When we started RevTech Labs over a decade ago, and we were talking about FinTech and building Charlotte into a FinTech innovation capital, one, we had to explain what FinTech was, no joke. Second, people were like, well, I still don't get it. And that was just after you had raised your D round with Bain Capital. Was that D or C round?
That was C round,
yeah. All right. So, and I think it was $250-ish million. And I could point to everyone like that. We're trying to plant seeds that a decade from now are going to look like that. So you didn't know it at the time, but you were actually immensely helpful in helping people understand the power of what we were doing here, because you were the grown-up version of that, even at that stage, which was only part way through your journey.
Yeah, exactly. And still in the middle of figuring it out.
Yeah. All right. I think almost everyone knows what AvidXChange does, but you are a B2B business primarily, so there's some folks that may not. Give us the quick version of AvidXChange.
Sure. AvidXChange is a software company that automates the accounts payable and payment process for middle market companies. So middle market is kind of an operative word, and we're kind of purpose-built to be catered to the middle market. And so simply speaking, what that means is that we eliminate the paper invoice and the paper check for businesses. So today, we have over 8,000 companies in the US market that use AvidXChange to manage their accounts payable and payment process. And that translates to also, on our payment network, we have over 825,000 supplier customers that are coming to AvidXChange to receive not only their payments, but also their remittance data, and use a series of cash flow management tools to help them better manage their cash flow. Including kind of one of our new innovations that I'm sure we'll touch on, which is called the Invoice Accelerator, that we're super excited about, especially with some of the turmoil in the current economic markets.
Yeah.
So yes, headquartered in Charlotte, we have roughly 1,600 plus teammates. The majority here in Charlotte, but also have 7 other offices around the country. With different segments of with teammates, and really focused on how do we continue to really transform how these middle market companies pay their bills. And the craziest stat is, here we are, Dan, in 2022, and within the middle market segment, still over across B2B, 40% of companies are still managing paper invoices, paper checks. In middle market, that number is like 60%.
That's crazy.
So that's why I can't sleep at night, is because of this massive market opportunity. I've run a couple other software companies, but never been involved in the market opportunity that we have.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. Well, we're going to talk more about AvidXChange, but before we do that, I wanted to focus on the theme of our conference, on this idea of renewal.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the journey that you've been on, because I've got to see almost firsthand the full journey from a local Charlotte angel funding through venture funding, through IPO. What has that journey been like for you personally, that ride?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me that a lot, and because we've been doing this a long time. We got started in April 2000, right? Just kind of a quick story there. I'd come off, exiting another company, and I'm like, okay, we'll raise our A round. We'll raise $10 million, pretty easily based on, what we did in the last company, and this is in early 2000. And
That'd be pre 9/11 for everyone out there.
yeah, exactly. And we were excited to close our A round at $1.5 million, with based on we had a target of 10 million, right? We were excited to close at $1.5 million, and a lot of that money was put in by myself and other members of the management team. And it was just a good example. It actually reminds me a lot of today on how quickly the world changed. It was like, there's 3 probably events, or 4 events in my lifetime where the world changed like overnight, and one was, the .com.
Yep.
Second was 9/11. Third was probably, the pandemic, COVID. And then the fourth one is kind of what we're experiencing right now, in the financial markets. And just for everyone out there that hasn't experienced, managing through the current times. So I have a 22-year-old son. He just graduated from college, and we're talking about, he's a kind of an active investor, and it's like during his entire adult investing life, everything was up to the right.
Yeah, right.
Like there's nothing that didn't go to the right. And now it's like it's not going to the right, and he's like, "What the hell's going on?" Right? And I'm like, "Yeah, welcome to the world of economics." But I think it's it's not easy, but we stick true to our strategy and our vision, and build a business one customer at a time.
Yeah. So for you personally, I know when we did our prep, you talked a little bit about, I think the Monday memos or Monday videos you do. You talked a little bit about your personal routine. Yeah. How do you deal with the stress? Because everyone can imagine the stress of that kind of a journey. Talk to us, if you're willing to, talk to us a little bit about that and how you renew yourself personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think the COVID, was an interesting phenomena from the standpoint of like, sending everybody home, but the result of it was that everyone worked a lot more, right? And it was really hard to separate, kind of the work from your personal life. But I actually, we'll probably talk a little bit about my some of the new things that I'm doing, just kind of being curious and social media and whatnot. But I did a kind of a video on this about my daily routine, and it starts by rolling out of bed, and the first thing I do is 60 push-ups, because you got to get the blood work.
So if I asked you to drop and do 60 push-ups,
I did my 60 push-ups already.
No problem right there?
Yeah, exactly. 60 push-ups every morning, and from then they're like, okay, I'm ready to start the day, figure out what my calendar is, and the big thing is creating the game plan for the day, and kind of like, okay, what are the small number of things I just have to get done, both strategically. What are the key conversations I need to have today? If there's difficult discussions, negotiations, whatever it may be that I need to do, I try to do them like early in the day, because this, like for me, like I'm far more energized and able to deal with really thorny problems early in the day, because otherwise you're thinking about it all day as well. Yeah. And then it allows you to have more, kind of a free mind space later in the day to work on other things.
Yeah. Wasn't there something in there also in the Monday video about taking cold showers after you work out?
Yeah. That's exactly. It's nothing like it's like doing the push-ups. Kind of gets you going, and
it's like doing the polar plunge every morning.
Absolutely. 60 seconds cold shower, and it's you're ready to start the day.
There you go, hot, cold, back and forth. How do you think your teammates deal with that as well? I mean, you're leading a team of people, right? They've been through this. Part of the whole reason we're talking about renewal at a conference is we think that's a theme permeating throughout business now. So how do you try and help your teammates figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, for one is really, keep reminding them that like, hey, you still have to take time off to kind of, recharge your batteries. And really, we were really focused, during COVID to make sure, people were still taking their PTO time, their vacation time, and things like that. And it was challenging because people were like, well, I don't want to take my vacation time because I can't go anywhere. And it's like, but you still have to, I don't care. Just
you
go
still
to
need to unplug
like go spend a week at the park.
Yeah, right.
Because it's really important to kind of recharge those batteries and just get yourself out of the daily routine. And it's amazing how many like good ideas come once you kind of get out of the daily firefight that you're in, and you kind of get yourself above the tree line a little bit, and just kind of think about your personal objectives, business objectives, and it helps kind of clarify, recharge, maybe reset priorities, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Colleen from Credit Karma was up on the stage yesterday, and I just want to make a connection here if you didn't pick up on it. She talked about the fact that she did I think she called it a Sunday email. On Sunday night, she would write an email to the team kind of outlining what's going on. You do a Monday video.
Yeah.
It's interesting during times of challenge, especially in disconnection, that leaders seem to say this cadence of communication seems to be important.
Absolutely, and so it's interesting is one of the kind of the methods to the madness of AvidXChange, and to give you a sense of we've gone about kind of 10 years by growing on average over 30% a year for 10 years, and so the amount of chaos that creates in an organization, kind of by definition, like everything breaks every 18 months, right? And so one of the things saviors that's helped us grow is having these daily, I call them the rhythms of the business, and it's like daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly rhythms, and so one of the things that we've been doing since the beginning, over 20 years ago, is having a Monday morning teammate meeting, and we do it at 11:35 every Monday, broadcast all to our offices, and it's basically AvidXChange news, and we actually have news anchors that are teammates that talk about the news of the week, talk about customer victories, product releases, key things that are happening in the business. And we've been doing that forever, but that was kind of a really critical kind of touch point that teammates had over the last couple of years of being COVID. And it's just one of the methods that we use to just keep everybody aligned, and the business is moving so fast, and keep everyone aligned on starting with the core strategies of business and how we're doing execution, pivots that we're making, because there's lots of pivots. And it's I think any kind of rhythms that you have, it's kind of organizing the chaos that happens, and people then take safety in these rhythms of how you run the business and how you're going to connect.
Yeah, there's also, I think, something about how you shared something personal about how you're dealing with renewal and stress, or something about making yourself vulnerable as a leader as you communicate too, right? Just being authentic and being.
Yeah, I think one of the things is as a leader, there's a fine line between sharing, kind of portraying, kind of that positive, kind of image about the business, and then all the stuff that you're can't sleep about, right? And you're you're scared about, right? But I can't let my team know about those things because they'll probably quit, and so there's a fine line there. But I think what I've learned over the years, right, is that the more vulnerable you are of sharing some of the things that you're struggling with, two things happen. One is it really kind of always surprised me how many people then come and really want to help solve the same problem. And like any other growth company, the more smart minds you have working on solving problems, the better off you are. And so my experience has been actually the opposite happened. Rather than scaring teammates, maybe there's been a few that got scared. People have actually risen to the challenge of saying, "Hey, Mike, let's we'll work with you to solve these problems." Yeah,
in the conversation we had with Bill Rogers yesterday, he talked a lot about purpose-driven leadership, and you just kind of talked about the same thing, right? It's the purpose and mission that we're doing that rallies everyone into alignment. It also made me think, you and I are a little older maybe than some of the folks in the audience. Your comments there made me think of an oldie but a goodie, Jim Collins' book on Good to Great, which if you've never read it, you should. And he talks about level 5 leadership, right? Which was for him the pinnacle of leadership that he saw from the companies he interviewed. And those leaders were able to do two things simultaneously. They had a brutally real grasp of the facts as they are, not as they want them to be, the challenges. Right. And they project optimism that we as a team have the intelligence, capability, drive, and purpose to get over these hurdles. Right. And they're seemingly contradictory thoughts, but it's exactly what you just described.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things is the way despite how kind of challenging something is, if you can provide people a vision of how you can get past it and what the future state can look like, then they'll rally around it, towards getting there, which is exactly what Colin said.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, we're going to move on to Avid after. I want one more question here on the renewal. For entrepreneurs, because you've been a founder where you're bootstrapping stuff up and have all the stresses of some of the founders that are in the audience. What advice would you give them, for them and for their teams when you're scrappy and you're lean, you're a small team? How do they renew? Because even in good times, they're driving so hard, right? And they're living kind of on the edge.
You know, I would say is, you know, find what I try to do, and I've done this for years, is to, you know, kind of create your own rhythms about how you work yourself. And so, you know, for example, like there's one day of the week that I try not to do anything like AvidXChange related, and that's Saturday. And then, you know, Sundays, you know, kind of once you kind of roll past the afternoon, Sunday nights actually is, I do a fair amount of work, but it's all in, to me, it's actually, it's a lot of fun work related to getting ready for the week.
Yeah, prep for
a lot of, you know, prep time, thinking about, you know, different things that key meetings that we have for the week, and really kind of preparing the week. And it makes like the execution of the week a lot easier. Yeah. Right, is taking that quiet time and doing kind of that prep, and also then use it, you know, to, I have a series of calls. One of my all-time favorite investors, board members, Matt Harris from Bain Capital Ventures. Matt and I talk every Sunday night at 9 o'clock, and we've been doing this since like 2015. Wow. You know, like 7 years, you know, and it's just about, you know, things that are going on in the business, you know, preparing for an upcoming board meeting, just, you know, strategy questions. It can raise the whole gamut, right? Yeah. But it's just a natural touch point that we have. And I've done that with, you know, other, you know, kind of key people in the business, you know, over the years as well, as, you know, have a series of calls, and, you know, every Sunday night. For me, that actually is kind of really kind of a great way to kind of get ready for the week. Yeah. And make sure kind of the right people in the business are connected.
So I took two theme lines out of that one: prepping for the week, make your week more productive, and also that you're not alone on this journey. When it's interesting, right. Even at your level of success, you know, having people that you interact with. I think a lot of founders think that they're out there by themselves. It's one of the recommendations we made. You saw that in the program slide I did, that idea of mentorship and peer mentorship and how valuable that is. So it's great to hear.
Absolutely. And I've, you know, have a series of kind of coaches over the years, both in terms of, you know, kind of business execution. Patrick Dean has been one of those. Mike Whitehead here in Charlotte, more recently, helping, and then you know, like, you know, key board members and advisors, and I kind of, you know, have kind of a theme for each person, in terms of, you know, what I go to them for, and you know, that's been really helpful for me over the years. Yeah.
So let's shift. Talk a little bit more about Avid. That journey from startup angel funding to being listed on the NASDAQ last year. That's quite a journey, and I know it can sometimes feel like it's all over the place. So as we were talking about the prep for this, Mike's going to share for the first time ever here his very secret model on how he deals with
highly proprietary
model of the roadmap of how he deals from that stress from startup to founder. I think we have a slide on this. Can we bring up Mike's proprietary roadmap slide? So I know we got a laugh out of this, and we did this too. Talk about this, because this is what you say the journey's like, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, what I tell people, it's like, you know, it's, you know, even you look at the most successful companies that there is, you know, it's never a straight line, you know, and, you know, people think, you know, at AvidXChange, we've been, you know, really successful for a long period. You know, that may be true, but it was never a straight line. Yeah. There's lots of zig and zags. There's lots of pivots that you make along the way. You know, the biggest thing is like, you know, you kind of, you know, you work like hell to get to one milestone. And then you're like, oh man, we made it. And then you kind of look and it's like, oh man, the next milestone looks so daunting, right?
The mountain's way up there still.
Right, and, but I'll tell you, you know, like every time it's happened to us is we've kind of started, we've like, you know, okay, like next milestone, next up, we have no idea how we're gonna get there, but we'll kind of begin figuring it out. And I think, you know, one of those things that, you know, kind of going back to the rhythms that if I had to point to, you know, I tell people kind of one thing that we've done, and this has been, I'm actually shocked that we haven't canceled any of them because we came this close so many times, is taking my executive team and off-site once a quarter, 4 times a year for 2 days. You know, so that's like 8 days out of the business.
That's a lot of time.
A lot of senior leaders, right? And we've done it since April of 2000. So for 22 years. And it's amazing when you look back at all the pivots that we made, innovations, everything else, you can actually point to literally each offsite where that idea came from. And for me, that's been the number one thing, is getting out of the daily firefight, getting your core team and trust, and just we spend kind of the 2 days. One day is kind of talking about what happened over the last 90 days, what did we learn, what are the trends, all those kind of stuff, and then the kind of next day is like, okay, what are the future strategies, that we're gonna kind of focus on longer term, and then what's the next 90 days going to look like, and taking that time to do that is. For me, has been kind of like, if I had to point to one thing that we did that's been key to our success, it's that rhythm around a quarterly 2 days, getting out of the daily firefight with your core team and working on the business.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple themes I'm hearing from what we've talked about already is that I think a lot of people think the entrepreneurial journey is this wild, wild west, free for all, no structure, which it can be at times. But what I'm hearing from you is a lot of discipline about how you handle the chaos and how you handle that unstructured world, which I don't think people perceive as part of an entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for me, it really kind of helps organize all the chaos, right? Yeah. And for example, like we still today, Mondays is we call it a WIS day, Week in Sync. And it starts with the executive team, from kind of 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock every Monday morning, 3 hours. And a lot of what happens is a lot of things that you're working on during the week, they say, hey, I need to talk to so-and-so, whatever, on the executive, like you just, it takes the stress off, because you're like, hey, I know on Monday I'm going to spend 3 hours, so like I'm not going to stress in terms of trying to track somebody down. It'll be part of the natural discussion that we have in running the business, every Monday.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful for us.
Let's talk about the IPO and the journey to decide to go public and what that was like. Most people will never get the opportunity to experience that. You were very purposeful in involving all your teammates in that journey, and you were nice enough to invite me over for that day. But I remember even you were doing sessions for the teammates about, what does it mean to go public? What does the offering mean? How do you set the price? I mean, it was really, really well done. What was that journey like for you?
I mean, well, first of all, it's like, when you start a business, it's like, the dream is like, someday, we'll, try to build this to be a public company, right? But it seems like so far out in the distance,
It's a mountain so far over the next mountain.
It's really kind of a dream. And so, the C, we're kind of purpose driven around it. We kind of started preparing, well over a year ahead of time. And when we kind of got to the point, the amazing part is that, like with all the backdrop of everything was going on in COVID, the AvidXChange business actually performed really well. And it set us up, to be a public company. In hindsight, looking back at what's happened in the market, we couldn't have timed it any better. We, kind of raised, just under $700 million, at really kind of the peak of the market. And so from a company perspective, it really positioned us to have this, we have a massive balance sheet today that's really positioning us well for the future. But when I would say, one of the things that was kind of very interesting is, the traditional process is you take a small team, you go to New York City, and you have kind of the bell ringing ceremony. And I said, it's like there's so many people that have been part of the journey, right, at AvidXChange and building this business for over 20 years. Like, how could we do something different? And so, when you get ready to go public, there's basically two options you have for exchanges: New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. And so we did a competitive process and had them both bid on. And one of the things that we, after we got their proposals, we sit back and say, well, here's, kind of a request that we have is that we actually want to do it in Charlotte, at our campus at the Music Factory, would either one of you guys propose moving it from New York to Charlotte for a day to do that? And NASDAQ came back and said, give us 24 hours to think about it, and ended up saying yes. Is the first time they ran the full opening bell, the closing bell outside of New York City, and they did it at here in Charlotte. And
it was a heck of an event, and you can watch some of it online too. But the ability for everyone in the company to participate in it was really special. I think that was well done. So talk about post-COVID, right? Huge, you talked about 4 life events that probably impact us all. How are you thinking post-COVID as a leader for AvidXChange and where you're going? I know there's some public things you can't project because you're now a public company.
Yeah.
But generally, what are you thinking post-COVID and how will it impact business?
Yeah, so first of all, it's kind of interesting. From, I mean, beginning in kind of, March of 2000 to today, it's been, probably the most interesting periods of time from a leadership perspective that I can remember, even navigating through kind of some of the dot-com, 9/11, kind of the 2007, 2008 crisis. But we're coming out of COVID and we're immediately going into all this uncertainty around, the economic environment, rising interest rates. We're still not out of COVID, all those type of things. And so actually one of the things I started, I just did a video on Instagram this past Monday on is moving from what I call kind of peacetime leadership to wartime leadership. And I kind of feel like, one of the things, there's so much uncertainty in the market and related to what's going to happen. And you have that uncertainty, and then I think a lot of people have uncertainty. Okay, how's that going to actually impact my business? Yeah. And that's a whole nother set of uncertainties, right? Yep. And so and kind of what my kind of notion is, it starts with one of the elements of difference is kind of more peacetime leadership. You're thinking about your 3 to 5 year BHAG, longer term strategies, and wartime is very specific. What are the next 6 quarters going to look like? 18 months, the balance of this year and next year. Don't even think about anything past that, right? And how are we going to run the business? And I think one of the, also the kind of the themes around make that that transition to wartime leadership is to simplify. Simplify your initiatives and execute a small number of things really well that matter the most. My experience in working through a number of these different, choppy times, you do that well, and then when you get on the other side of this, it really sets you up to accelerate.
Yeah, it's funny, for those of you who listened to Bill Rogers, the CEO of Truist yesterday, said almost exactly that same thing sitting in that chair, which is, we talked about great leaders, we talked about Colin Powell talking about battle plans. Great leaders are great simplifiers, right? And that's part of what you can do as a leader is simplify down to the purpose of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think along with that, then be really clear in communicating, to your team, why you're doing things, right? What's the reason why we're simplifying, and providing context to it. And my experience is you'd be surprised on how your team rallies around that same message.
Yeah, absolutely. So is the 6-quarter focus because you don't know what the landscape looks like on the other side of that hill in wartime kind of footing, or is that because you need to focus more on the adjusting in the immediate nature, or is it some of both?
Yeah, because I think a lot of the kind of the wartime nature is there's very few of these cycles that last more than 18 months. Yeah. And I think it's around I call is you have 2 focuses as a company. First of all, let's make sure you survive the next 18 months. Right. And the second is, okay, once we kind of figure out how we're going to survive, what are we going to do in the business to make sure that we thrive as we come out of it. Yeah. Right. And a lot of that may be preserving capital, right? Extending your runway. If you can avoid doing, kind of your next capital raise in the middle of the crisis, you're going to be far better off, right? Than if you, have to raise money, in a kind of a dicey market.
Something about investors not liking uncertainty, something about that, I don't know. You mentioned Instagram a second ago, so before we get off stage, I want to go back to that, because social media is something we talked about how you dealt with uncertainty too, that at one point you kind of shunned it all, and now you're kind of having a little personal renewal. Talk to us about where you were, where you are, and how do you see that going forward?
Well, so first of all, so full disclosure, I'm 55, right? So I, in kind of, the social media stuff come on, I'm I'm like, that's not me. If I want to communicate with somebody, I pick up the phone and call them. Yeah, right. Type of thing, right? And so, one of the things, it's funny, Brad Feld, I think it was in, I don't know, early, it was 10 years ago. Yeah. He declared one day in one of his blogs that he's shutting down Facebook. Yeah. And I read his blog, I'm like, that's a great idea. I shut mine down on the same day. I'm like, it's driving me crazy, right? And so, so I really hadn't leaned in except for LinkedIn. Yeah. And so, but one of the factors, there's 2 factors in our business. One is our, average employee age across our, 1,600 teammates is 32 years old.
Sure.
Right? They communicate in different ways than I do.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of it is social media driven. The second thing, that one of the biggest, you know, reasons of adoption challenges we have in our overall market, the reason why 60% of companies are still managing paper invoices, paper checks, is because you have CFOs, controllers, finance leaders that are at the kind of, you know, later in their careers, and they're like, well, we've always done it this way, and they're reluctant to change. Right? And it's like, okay, I'm leading, you know, kind of a change agent company. Like, I don't want to be that CFO that's reluctant to change. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to lean in social media. So, so I created it's you know, Instagram Mike Praeger, and it's really easy for thought leadership. And I do a daily, a weekly Monday Insights on some aspect of leadership and lessons I've learned across my career and in running AvidXChange, and really provide it as kind of a, you know, sharing my experiences in thought leadership. Overall leadership related to, and using Instagram as the platform.
Well, there you go. If you want to continue the conversation, because we're out of time, follow at Mike Praeger on Instagram. For anyone who's watching later, too, you can get your thought leadership knowledge there. Mike, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for all the support.
Happy to help. I mean, Charlotte's an amazing place. It's been amazing for me to build AvidXChange, the partnership with you know, the whole ecosystem of entrepreneurs, you know, the university, academics, along with the support of the city has been phenomenal. And I'll tell you, and spending a lot of time in, you know, lots of different cities around the country, Charlotte is a special place. And we have a lot of assets that other cities just don't have. And I'm super excited what the future looks like, especially around what we're doing in fintech.
Well, great. We'll leave that as the last word. Thanks again for being here. How about a big round of applause for Mike Praeger, please?
Thank you.
We're going to do a quick set change, and then we'll bring up the next set of speakers, but you can find out what's next, Umbrella. Thanks, everyone.